Welcome to Here's the Deal. I'm your host, Shilo, and I got my trusty co- co-host with
Wow.
me. Yeah, I was thinking about
Wow.
horses and I said horse. Mr. Marvin, how are you?
Good. Give me half a second before we get too far committed. I got to reload our Rumble.
I see that it went haywire on us.
Yeah.
So,
uh, Fun and
just
games.
been out enjoying our warm weather today.
Uh, the windy weather, you mean?
Yeah, it didn't
Yeah.
get windy up here until later in the afternoon, but yeah, it was. I heard it's been pretty crazy down there.
I don't know. I mean, we're pretty used to 20 miles an hour all the time anyway. So I don't know if
Yeah,
there's a real difference there, is there?
I
All
guess.
right. There we go. And that should be up and running and perfect.
So we have an interesting guest this evening. He's going to be running for national committeeman for the Republican Party. Um, Dr. Steve Nagel, he's here with us. He's has a practice down there in Mandan called 180 Health Solutions. I know he helps a lot of people down there with their health. And then him and Cody do a afternoon radio show on Fridays, I do believe, called Freedom Friday. So with that, let's bring Mr. Dr. Steve Nagel on with us.
Yeah. Don't forget that doctor.
Here we are.
How are you,
How
Dr.
you doing?
Steve?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on here.
Well, thanks
been a
for
minute.
joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously it's exciting times right now in North Dakota politics, and you decided to throw your hat in the ring as running for the Republican Party
Yeah,
national committeeman. So
yeah.
uh,
It definitely was something that maybe I didn't maybe think I was going to be doing even 3 months ago. But the timing seems to be working out really well, and it was just a lot of things started to fall in place to where I could make time for it. And that's the biggest thing I think for a lot of our patriots is finding time to do what matters, And so, running full-time practice, it's a busy thing when you're doing your own thing and trying to manage a team and still see patients and do all that sort of thing. But figured out a way to make it work. And national committee man seemed to be a role that I feel like I could do well with, and as well as I can make it work into my schedule. So.
All right, and you are running against Shane Gettle, who's been the committeeman for how long now? Do you even know?
He'll be up with 8 years, shooting for another 4.
So it's a 4-year term.
Yep.
So what are you going to bring to the table that's going to be different than what we've seen for the last 8 years?
Well, I don't know if you noticed, but it kind of seems like the Republican Party doesn't really have an identity anymore. They're not willing to take a stand. They don't know what they stand for. It seems like everybody's super wishy-washy and there's very little direction. I think that is one thing that as a Republican Party, I think we can do a lot to improve our messaging. I think our society and our world actually agrees with a lot of what we think, but we allow the media to maybe distort or change how the world or how the rest of our people that maybe not be consider themselves to be Republican or conservative actually think about what it means to be conservative. When I was in when I was with a group, a chiropractic group, one of the things that they always taught was that your stand is your brand, right? Meaning what you take a stand for is how the world's going to perceive you. And if you fail to take a stand, the world's going to decide what that brand is for you, right? And I think right now that's what we're suffering from. One of the things we're suffering from as a conservative Republican, that person identifies more as a Republican than anything else, right? Is that we really don't have a brand, right? And if we do have a brand, it's a negative brand. And it's because we allow the media to dictate what it is that the rest of the country thinks about us.
Well, not even nationally. I mean, just locally, you look, we have 3 pretty distinct branches of the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 4, but you have the establishment. I mean, the guys that have been there forever. You have this kind of new, I don't know if you want to call them a neo-Burgum group or if you want to call them a Burgum group, but they are definitely governor based. We have the conservatives, which are grassroots and stuff, and then you kind of have the moderates where they're not quite sure where they fit into everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do believe that, even you talk to some of the people that we consider more establishment, they believe in a lot of the things that maybe a conservative should believe in, but their actions don't necessarily justify that, number one. And number two, like they get frustrated with how the grassroots movement is going about it. And I can understand that. I can understand where there's frustration, but then I can also see that we're being ignored, right? And so the more you get ignored, the more you're going to say, hey, like at some point, enough is enough, and we need to say something, and so looking at that and looking at, hey, like what do we stand for as conservatives, right? And you take any of these different issues, and we allow the leftist media to try to pigeonhole us into, like, let's take like even immigration, right? That's a great example of where, the left is going to say, well, you hate immigrants. We don't hate immigrants. We just want you to come here the right way. Like I'm a huge proponent for legal immigration, right? And do I think I'm a huge opponent of illegal immigration where we're bringing bad people into the country? But I'm a huge proponent of bringing good people into the country that want to contribute and want to make our world better. But if we don't tell people that, if we just let the media say, yeah, well, we do hate immigrants, right? Like that's a really bad image.
Well, not even with the immigrants thing, just to kind of piggyback off that, Steve, you're talking about bringing in bad people, not just that, but what they do to our systems, whether it be our healthcare systems, our school systems, even though they're a dumpster fire the way it is. And so it's not just, in my opinion, bringing in those bad people, but it's
the crime, right?
Yeah,
it's the
we
crime,
have to
it's
carry
everything else that goes with it, right? We got to carry that burden. And so
if we could back up just a little bit, I find it interesting, like you said, we don't really know what we stand for. And I'm kind of wonder, is that because we've been infiltrated so much as well? I mean, yeah, we can blame it that on the establishment and the moderates, or however you want to say that, but I feel like some of that too is because we've been infiltrated so much, because Democrats know that they can't get elected without an R behind their name. Talking about, go ahead.
Yeah, particularly here in North Dakota, right?
Yep.
So, and it's safe for them to put an R behind their name because there's no consequences of that, right? They only know that's going to be an advantage to that, and obviously the position I'm looking for is more on a national stage. That's why I kind of tend to talk about the national issues. But you're very right, and so that's when you see, when we have these Republicans that have some of them have almost a strictly liberal voting record. And you look at people like Judy Lee and those sort of cohorts that, in any other state, they probably run on a left-leaning ticket because they have a chance of getting elected. But here they don't have the courage to do that. And so that's the other thing, is having the backbone, right? Having the courage to stand for what you believe in. And, that's really uncomfortable for a lot of people that are in the squishy middle, right? Because by having a backbone, that means that you have to stand on a principle, and you're not being influenced by, whatever, big corporate interest is maybe sending money your way. And, and that's one of the things when we talk about what's been happening on a national level with the RNC, there's a couple other things I think need to change. And one of them is moving from this top-down approach to a bottom-up approach. And so that's where you see, over the last few weeks, we've seen that top-down approach literally being folded and being like kicked out. You have your Ronna McDaniels, she voluntarily stepped down under a massive amount of pressure. And then a week later, you see them kicking out 60 bureaucrats, right? Like 60 people that they basically went and gutted a lot of this overhead. And if we're the party that's supposed to be for like fiscal responsibility and not wasting money, but the fundraising wing of our entire Republican endeavor has a massive amount of overhead and bloat, what does that say about the people that they're pushing to get elected? And so the candidate that I'm running against, he was very much in support for Ronna McDaniels, which essentially, you know, they actually wrote he was actually signed on to an endorsement letter for her before any other candidates had actually even been nominated. And so like the whole election for her was already said and done before it even went anywhere. And that's what you talk about, this big top down thing. You look at Nikki Haley, right? And did anybody in their right mind, did anybody ever think that she was actually going to get the nomination?
No.
And yet they let this thing drag on, and we spent all this money, all this time, all this energy into draining the resources of both the Trump campaign as well as all the, you know, the donors that maybe Nikki Haley had.
Yep.
And instead of focusing it on Joe Biden, we're here just wasting money, wasting time, wasting energy.
Well, I think their end game with that deal was they were hoping that he was gonna be in jail, or however you want to put that, and she was gonna be the lone winner and who they were gonna run with.
Yeah.
So
which brings up a whole other point, right? How much time and energy has the Republican National Committee put into fixing the courts, right? We have all these kangaroo courts where we have people being prosecuted for showing up on the White House lawn. We have people that are all the way up to a former president, right? That's being prosecuted like in these different kangaroo courts around the country, basically trying to keep him off the ballot. And so, you know, and so we're missing that whole game of what are we doing to make sure that our courts aren't being corrupted.
It would be interesting to see how many of our senators and Congress, our congressmen, are actual lawyers, because I think that's probably some of the problem as well. But
well, and you would think if we had lawyers, right, which is real, that's an interesting conversation, because if we had lawyers, we should be able to get into the legal aspect of protecting each other and protecting our interests, right? But then also you have to look at, you look at even the Bar Association. It's if you go way back to where it originated, it's a heavily leftist bar. So you have to pledge your allegiance to the bar before you actually pledge allegiance to your own client. Like your allegiance is to the bar over your client.
Yep.
And so even that whole world is being basically twisted from the inside out.
Mm-hmm. So one more question before we get into the future, and that is, what does a national committeeman actually do, for those of us that don't know?
Great question. And so I've been spending a lot of time with Lori, our national committee woman, like talking through what do they do, right? So the Republican National Committee is tasked with it's essentially the fundraising wing of the Republican Party, as well as it helps to determine the direction that the Republican Party goes, right? So there's 3 positions with each state. So North Dakota has a relatively high representation based upon our population, right? So we have equal population, or we have equal representation with, whether it's California or New York, some of these really bigger places. And so we each have 3 different representatives. We have the National Committee man, the National Committee woman, and then we have the state GOP chair. And so essentially what happens is there's different committees, there's different aspects of, what sort of policies are we going to try to push? What sort, there's different areas that we can dive into. And then looking at, where are we moving the party, right? Where are we putting funds? Like, how are we raising money? And all that good stuff too. And then also the committee man itself, right? We also, I would also have on the state GOP, there's actually a voting position for that too.
So on the local side of this, as national committee man, would you be involved with any candidate identification, stuff like that, for as seats came up for House or Senates? Because this year we've had a lot of senators and House representatives retiring pretty much across the state. It's been insane. So would you be involved with trying to help different districts identify possibly good candidates?
That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure from the Republican National Committee about how that stuff gets dictated down through the rankings. I would imagine they delegate their leadership to the state GOP. And that being said, I'm fairly outspoken anyways. And so if I were to be elected, I mean, I don't think there's anything to say that I'm not going to support that I'm not going to be able to support who I want to support. And if they were to be saying that, I think we'd be tangling about that. So.
Right.
Does that answer your question? Maybe I didn't answer your question, but
in a roundabout way, yes. I know it's a new role for you. We'll revisit that after you get elected at the convention.
Yeah, it's interesting. Lori talks about a lot about it being, what you want it to be, is then you can take it as far as you want it to go, or you can do the bare minimum. But at the same time, there's I'm not here just to hang out. To be honest, like I don't have time for that. I think anybody that knows me knows that if anything, I may, the question is, do you really have time for this? And I think if it's important enough to make time for, I will. But at the same time, I'm not here just to see how things are going. I'm here to give input, and I'm here to create change.
Good
Yeah,
deal.
I was just gonna ask that, is with everything that you going on with owning your own business and being on the radio and stuff like that, are you going to where's the happy medium for you?
Yeah, so there is a time commitment, but a lot of the time commitment is actually like a week at a time. So as in like the different events, there's like 3 or 4 events throughout the year, and I've kind of made the corporate decision in my company that it may be good for me to leave for a week or two every now and then to let my team catch up with things. I had that feedback actually of like, we could just use some time away, because like when I'm there, like we're super busy. And like I'm seeing people, I'm there to make a difference in people's worlds. So I want my schedule to be as busy as I can be. But at the same time, there's a lot of times that things just start to build up, and it's good for me to leave for a while.
I mean, at least you're honest enough to say that, hey, sometimes I just need to step away too. And you see a lot of business owners where they almost over delegate sometimes, and then everybody gets overwhelmed, stressed out, stuff like that. Like,
Yeah. So it'll be good just to slow it down every now and then. And even though I have a hard time slowing down, this will give me something to do while slowing down.
There you go. Well, and it is busy in there. I've been in your practice, so I can vouch for you. It is busy in there, and there's a reason for that. It's because you guys are good at what you do. So
yeah, I feel super fortunate because I believe it is a different form of healthcare than what most people are exposed to, and what they have the opportunity to be a part of. And it's pretty special when you see people get their health back, and in ways that maybe they've been looking for 5, 10, 15 years to get that back, and have a great team too. And so like every year they get better and better, and so I'm super thankful for all that. And yeah.
Go ahead, Marvin. No, I was letting you ask questions here.
Oh,
Steve and I get in trouble together, so you put us on there talking too long.
We live only 2 blocks. We only live 2 blocks away, but here we are on a podcast together.
Holy, right? You guys all live just right on the same block then, you two and Lori, huh?
Yeah, I can throw a rock down the street and hit Lori's house.
I had no idea. I didn't know that.
Yeah, what's really interesting is right up the street from me, 4 or 5 houses up, is John Hoven's old house.
Okay.
So right on the corner of Overlook and Aspen was the one that he had when he first moved to Bismarck, is the way the story goes.
Really?
Yeah. So when it comes down to it though, like, you and I always talk positions and talk about running for stuff. And so like, I didn't know until we were doing the show the other night that you had announced during the afternoon show, Freedom Friday, that you do on K-Fire. Yeah, I was super excited. I think I sent you a text like right away. And it's nice. It's nice to see somebody challenging. We have too many uncontested races in North Dakota, whether it's the insurance commission or it's the state treasurer or it's PSC. Like, I think everybody should have a challenge. We shouldn't just be going uncontested into every election, because people don't want to go out and vote if they're only voting for one name.
Yeah.
And that's what's kind of cool about the U.S. House position this year, is now we're up to 4 candidates for House. We have 3 candidates for governor going into the primary. So it's nice to see the challenge for for the committee man too, because that'll make convention one more interesting thing to happen.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and the difference with this position itself is the convention is the deciding factor. You know, the vote doesn't go to a public vote to the people. It's all decided by the GOP. And so that's where it makes this one just a little bit. There's a little bit more at cost. If I wanted to run in the primary, I couldn't. Right.
Yeah. It's a fast and hard race, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So are you going to be down to the convention Thursday night then, or are you headed down Friday?
So the plan is to go over Friday afternoon, or excuse me, Thursday afternoon.
Thursday afternoon. Yeah,
Yeah.
We'll be down in the morning, so I'm coming down Friday.
Okay. Friday morning. Nice.
Yep. Yeah. I didn't want to work all day and then drive to Fargo.
Yeah. Well, right. That's probably what I'm going to do. So, yeah.
What is your?
Go ahead,
Marv.
Nope, yours.
I was just gonna ask you kind of what your plan for the convention is. Then, are you speaking then?
So there's how it's set up is we have about a half an hour total to like state our case basically. And so you'll have somebody that does a nomination. You have two people that can do seconding nominations, and then you can actually get to do like they call it a floor event or something to that effect. Details, right? It's and what we're gonna do is a video montage, and it's gonna be sweet. So, and then there's a part where there's like a up to 15-minute speech, but I don't know if I'm gonna use the whole 15 minutes, and probably not. But I do have, there's obviously certain specific things that on the platform that I think we need to talk about and that need to be discussed. And we covered about the one about taking a stand and making sure, and growing a spine. There's also, when we look at getting rid of all the corporate money, right? So that's one of the platforms is, hey, we need to make this a grassroots thing, right? Where, letting lawyers and, opportunist politicians start to being basically profiting off of the Republican Party, right? And so I think that's a huge thing where if you're making money off of the races and off of division in the party and all that sort of thing, I think that's a problem, right? If you're a marketing company or you used to own a marketing company and you're sponsoring all these different elections, I think there's a conflict of interest there. And then the other thing when we talk about is simply winning, right? Like we should be winning elections, but we have this Republican Party that prefers up to very recently that we're paying all these consultants and wasting all our money when we should be having people on the ground teaching people how to win elections, right? Whether it's our county, whether it's our precinct, whether it's our district, right? Getting people mobilized and actually getting people on the ground doing the work. We're having to see other organizations do that for the Republican National Committee because they're not doing it, especially in the big swing states, right? You have Turning Point USA that's having to go to Wisconsin, they're having to go to Arizona and put boots on the ground because the Republican National Committee has spent all the money paying their consultants. And so you just saw 60 of them. And so this is the thing, right? Rona McDaniel's gone, and a week later they let go 60 bureaucrats. Like what do you need 60 people for? And they're really cleaning house and trying to get getting more specific and more focused. And I think what you're seeing this massive overhaul, and there is a huge grassroots movement to work on flipping at least 20 of those seats so that the grassroots people, the people that get up and go to work every day and really want to save the country for its own good, not necessarily just to feed their friends corporate money, you're seeing these people get involved.
Yeah. I think one of the best things that President Trump did when he got involved was the phonies started coming out of the woodwork, and kind of to your point is we've been infiltrated so much, and why do we need all these people? It's just it's amazing to me. I just feel that when he started draining the swamp, so to speak, it spoke volumes, even here in North Dakota. I mean, and now we've got people that aren't even going to show up for the convention. I mean, are they really what is their true intentions? Are they really there for the people like they say they are, or are they just smoke and mirrors and a distraction over here? You know what I mean?
You know what I see it as? I see it as the idea that the more you hear somebody, the more you get to know who they are, the more you get to see their true colors. And so if they can keep everything a mystery right up to the vote, they can rely on a few mailers, they can rely on a few little deceptive things that maybe they hire a marketing company to send out a sleazeball article or a sleazeball mailer and maybe shift the vote 20%. You know, you saw Doug Burgum do it.
Yep.
And you'll see that crew do it again. You know, you have, you know, certain entities like Pat Finken and those guys sending out different marketing materials that are very deceptive. You know, look at Dan Johnston's his election campaign. They went after him for, I believe it was $160 late tax payment. That wasn't even, and it was the IRS that got the taxes wrong.
Yep.
And they sent this huge marketing thing about like evading taxes or something to that extent. I don't remember the details of it exactly. But you look at that and it's like, well, where are your ethics and morals? Like bring it back to an honest campaign.
Yep. And that's where I have a lot of issues with the mudslinging. Like, I'm tired of it. I am. And even when it comes to Trump, I just want to hear what you're going to do.
Yeah.
I think we're politically exhausted. We have been for 20 years, where it's just I'm going to beat this guy down until you think that it's dirt. And you see it from the other side too. I mean, Orange Man bad, right?
Yeah.
But it's what I would like to see from candidates is I don't want a mud smearing campaign. Like, just tell me what you're going to do. Tell me how you're going to accomplish it. Like I've talked with other legislative candidates that we've had on the show when we get off air. I'm like, you guys need to do this. If you're running for office, I go, pick 3 things that you can speak well for, 3 things that you want to see change. 2 of them that are easy to accomplish, something that you can get done your first, second, round of legislative session. I go, but your 3rd one, pick something challenging, pick something that you may not get passed, or you may have to bring it through and revise it a lot, but something that matters to your legislative district, to your community. And so that's refreshing to hear, is you don't want to get into mudslinging. Because I know you and I, we can get pretty worked up when we sit down and talk. So
yeah.
So it's nice to hear that breath of fresh air.
Well, and that's the thing. Like from what I know about about the candidate that's running against me, like Perry's a great guy, but also at the same time, if you're not willing to take a stand for things and you're wishy-washy and maybe you're listening more to the big corporate donors than you are to your own people, which I do know that happened to some extent during the Ronna McDaniel's election campaign. Beyond that, I just think that we need somebody that's going to be more willing to take a stand and to actually be pushing to make a change.
Well, and the accessibility, I mean, it's probably going to be a little bit easier to get a hold of you, I would think.
Well, for you maybe, but you live right. You know where I live.
Yeah, well, if you start being naughty, I'll tell everybody else where you live too.
Yeah, there you go. Dang.
It's not like he doesn't have commercials all over either, so they can.
No, I wouldn't do that. But it's we've just seen so many things, and like I spoke when I ran for office, one of the first signatures I got was from somebody here in Bismarck that used to take Ed around when he was campaigning, and she goes, when we first started this, we were the grassroots. We were the ones taking out the establishment. And that's something I want everybody to be mindful of, is like, with the grassroots, you have to keep honest. You got to keep to yourself, because you look at this last legislative session, we had 12 legislators taking money from Pfizer. You have money being taken from companies all over the place. And you see how the votes are swayed at our own Capitol. On a national level, I mean, that's something that committee has to be mindful of too, you would think, right?
I would hope so. Yeah.
So And the downsizing of the office, I mean, the whole platform is based on less government, right?
Well, right? Isn't that ironic? Like we got all this bloat, right? Like in our government, everywhere you look, these entities just keep getting bigger and bigger. And and we look at well, who's leading the party? A bunch of government bloat. We got more consultants than we got workers, which I exaggerate, but at the same time, it's
right. So, besides what we've been talking about this evening, is there anything that you really want people to know
about
when
me?
it comes to
Well, I don't know, man. I feel like I feel like I am who I am, and yet I don't know what people need to know about me or about.
Right.
I grew up small town North Dakota. I wrestled. I was I took school seriously, and I was and there's a lot of lessons to be learned. I was on a Gary Eminis show the other night, and he's starting a glory days thing where you talk about like your high school like things that you were successful. It kind of felt weird, but at the same time, I think back to so many lessons learned about personal responsibility and showing up and working hard, and I think a lot of that in our schools today is gone, and I think that's a huge place where the Republican Party can make huge inroads, is being stalwarts for our children's future, because the left certainly isn't sticking up for that. They're not thinking long term with our kids' future, right? They're looking at coddling them. They're looking at making sure that everything is cushioned around their world, instead of saying, hey, the more you stand up for yourself and the more you're able to put forward, the more that the world's going to give back to you in exchange. And so I think that's an important part of my history. I grew up, some of my formative years were the drought years of the early 90s, and I just remember I'm super thankful for my parents, because I think about when you're that age, you don't really realize how much your parents do for you all the time, and they always, I remember, even as rough as things were, we were always provided for. We never went without, but I didn't know any better. I just but you think back and and so I'm just super thankful for that, and super thankful for all the lessons that I learned growing up and in that small town atmosphere. And I don't know if that's available in a lot of places around the country anymore.
I would agree with that.
We're kind of a bastion compared to the rest of the country. I mean, we still have our small towns. We still have our gravel roads for miles. We still have a lot of that. And it's the one thing that I'm taking away from last convention coming into this one is there was so much sway and power just from Bismarck, Grand Forks, and Fargo for deciding the votes. What's kind of your networking plan for getting out to those districts?
Unfortunately, right, we're on a really tight time schedule.
Yeah.
Fortunately, with the radio show, I do have, in the rural areas, I do have quite a big reach in there. Some of the districts I've talked to, district chairs that I've talked to, they're telling me that 80-90% of the people already know who I am, because we've been doing the show for 4 or 5 years. And, there's a lot of listeners that tune into Freedom Friday every afternoon. And so, that's one thing that I have going for me. Making sure I'm connecting with the chairs, making sure, we do get messages to the delegates, and to the, we do get the contacts of the delegates. And so we're going to be, basically just attempting to let them know who I am, and I enjoy talking, not necessarily about myself, but about these very topics of health, about everything from health to freedom to liberty, and these different issues that I think are very pivotal. We're taught in school that we should avoid politics, we should avoid health, we should avoid religion, but I think they're interesting topics, and if we're not taking part in them, they're going to decide our future, whether we like it or not. And I feel like maybe that's why they tell us not to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing I run into is I'm a very in-your-face personality when I need to say something. And so Like
Yeah.
that's why it's nice every now and then to have the conversations with you about stuff like this, because it's not that you're not in your face, but you have a very different approach. I'm kind of a blunt force object when it comes down to it, and you've seen it at committee meetings and everything else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I've practiced that a lot. You know, my co-host Cody Shu, we get to play off that a little bit. I'm the
Yeah.
sane guy. I get to be the sane guy in the conversation.
right. Well, and like just kind of feeding off the running for office, like it's awesome that you're standing up. This last week in our house, I've been debating a run at the Bismarck City Commission.
Do it.
I'm not going to this time around,
Fair.
and I have my reasons.
Yeah.
My point at this going into it, like I'd probably have a very good run at the office. Marquardt and Connolly are both up. The mayor has put out feelers trying to draft other candidates because he's trying to move both of them off the city commission. I don't know if that's the best play either. But my biggest takeaway from this is, yes, I'm upset about a lot of different things that have gone on. But when I get there, I also know I've probably upset the Bismarck City Commission enough that I'm going to be a lone vote for a long time. And I don't want to.
Unless you have a running mate.
Yeah, but it's too late of a time to do it. It really is. And it's not just about them giving away millions of dollars of riverfront property that's going to lose the centralized boat docks. It's not just this new property evaluation that are going to raise our home values 10%, which by my tax rate, they've actually increased my taxes 20% in the last 5 years. Two of the seated commissioners are ones that we avidly fought with during all the COVID stuff. You have the ungodly water rates that need to be addressed and taken care of. You have a lot of other issues that need to be addressed. And the back and forth that we've had, and the back and forth that I've had, is I don't want to go into the city commission race and not take out the city commissioner I want gone. If you know what I mean.
So you're going for the next round, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we'll reevaluate that in a couple of years. And I wasn't even intending to run, but I've had 3 different groups approach me about it. We put a lot of thought and prayer into it. I made a lot of conversations about it this last week, and I even alluded to it Tuesday night. But when it comes to it, I mean, obviously you didn't make this decision like spur of the moment. You put some thought into it, correct?
Yeah, there was a series of events that happened on that Friday before I started having the conversations. I wasn't, I'd had conversations weeks before that and had pretty much ruled it out based upon time. Not that I didn't want to do it. I just couldn't foresee how I could fit it into my world at that moment. And then it was kind of an interesting series of events. I ended up attending a meeting for the fundraisers for, we had caught word of it. There was a meeting for the big donors of the middle people. I ended up going to this meeting, and it a lot of things that were said there just really, I realized how out of touch these people were. And I was like, man, like if these are the people that are leading the conservative movement, like we got to find something different to do. And so after that, I had a meeting at noon with my staff. That was like a special meeting we had called. And so at 10 o'clock that morning, after that initial meeting I went to, which would be for a whole nother podcast. It was great, by the way.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one later.
So I go and I'm sitting with a friend there, and he's like, hey, like I got a free trip to Cabo. Can you go? And I'm like, no, I got to see patients. Like I can't get away from the office. By the way, when is it? And so I had this special meeting with a few of my staff members, specifically our functional nutrition and our nutrition protocols and that sort of thing, that part of our clinic around noon. I go to this meeting at noon, and everybody's overwhelmed. They're like, we can't keep up. Like everything's moving so quick. We're behind. We're one person short staffed. And I'm like, it'd probably be good if I went to Cabo for a week, don't you think? Like jokingly. And they're like, yeah, you should go. And like their eyes just lit up. They're like, we could use a week to catch up. And I got to thinking, I'm like, well, why don't I just schedule that every 3 months? Like, because that was the biggest roadblock for me, was to be able to get a full week away on a regular basis to attend the conventions. And so I'm like, I could actually schedule that into my world, like, and so it all happened like in succinct in that day. And then I started having conversations that weekend, and by Monday I decided I was going to do it.
And then you waited till Friday to announce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure I had all my signatures. Like, I wanted to make sure I had all my ducks in a row before I said something that didn't happen.
So you bring up a good question. How many signatures do you need? Is it just based on district chairs for the state convention, or how's that work?
Yeah. So you need 10 signatures from district chairs around the state.
Perfect. Well, and that's the same for the statewide candidates too, don't they? They have to get a letter of recommendation from the state chairs or from the district chairs.
Yeah, I'm not even sure how that works, to be honest with you, for the rest of them.
Because I think for the DPI candidates, they have to have recommendations from 10 chairs.
Okay.
To be able to attend the convention, even though it's nonpartisan, they still get that. It's a letter of recommendation. It's not an endorsement. So I thought that was really interesting too, and I was going to ask you about that. Like, can anybody throw their name in the hat, or are there some rules you got to do here?
Yeah, you got to get endorsements from 10 chairs.
So you must have squeaked in right before the deadline then too.
Yeah, a good team helped me out.
Yeah, because the deadline for state convention was what, 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago?
So it was a Friday 7th. I think it's been a week now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'd be I think it was the 7th or 8th, whatever the Friday was.
Yeah. Oh
yeah. Let's just say there was a lot of district chairs that were hoping somebody would run, and so once I put the word out there, it wasn't hard to get a hold of people.
Perfect. No, that's I'm excited. It adds another level of fun to the state convention. I know there's a lot of people that are dreading it, but I have a feeling it's going to be one you don't want to miss. I know that registration was due today. I hope everybody that is a delegate got their stuff set up for registration.
Yeah, and so it's a soft requirement. So if people are out there that still want to become a delegate, to come support me, to support whoever, there is until the 21st for them to contact their district chair to get registered. So we can still actually get people registered. So if there are people out there that are like, I had no idea you're running, I decided not to go, it's not too late to change your mind.
Well,
and there's a lot of open seats now, because a lot of people are actually realizing that Fargo is a long ways. It's a little bit expensive. It is a cost commitment, and I totally get that. And at the same time, I would be super appreciative for people that are willing to come support me.
Well, and I was kind of dragging my feet on registering, because I'm like, well, I'm just going to do it next week. I was planning on doing it the week of the 17th. Yeah. And all of a sudden I get a phone call from Lori and Carl like, hey, are you going to state? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going. I was going to do it next week. And they're like, well, the cutoff's Friday. I'm like, oh, well, so today I sat down and knocked that out.
Yeah, I don't exactly know what the cutoff means. Like, if it means they're giving up the seats to other people that are reserved, or what?
I think it's just for printing for the convention book.
Right.
It's a pre-courtesy for food count, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
So that was on me. It's just I've been so sidetracked because it was our anniversary this week. We got little girl's birthday coming up, so it's been go in our world on top of everything else. So all of a sudden I got the messages yesterday. I'm like, oh boy, I should probably do that.
Good thing you did.
Well, and Shilo missed his endorsing convention, but he's still going to be at the state convention, aren't you, Shilo?
Yes, but I'm going to be in a little different capacity. So
we got a press pass.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
media.
So we'll have.
So does that mean you get to vote too, or I mean, like, no, do you get to be a delegate as well as press, or no?
No, he just requested. I didn't get my own press pass because I knew I was going to be a delegate.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we'll be at the state convention for the show that Friday night, so that'll be kind of fun. Do a little recap for folks. So
yeah, nice. You can do it live.
Yeah, of course.
We'll
We
do it live. Yeah. We haven't figured out how to do the rest of it yet, so we have to do it live. Shoot. So.
Well, at least you don't have to worry about people thinking you're gonna like selectively edit things. Like, we don't even know how to go live. We don't know any other way to do it.
Yeah. No, I don't believe in editing.
No.
So raw and uncut. Let's go.
You couldn't if you tried. You don't know how to do it.
That's right.
He doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing.
I gotcha.
And I'm not going to begin to start to do that.
Yeah. If Shilo knew how to edit, you have funny faces drawn all over your show.
Right. Well, Steve,
he'd be a bunch of places he didn't want to be.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, I know it's your Friday night and you probably have better things to do.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah. Do you have any final, like, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm standing for, here's why you need to vote for me?
Well, that really puts me on the spot. But that being said, if you're looking for somebody that's going to stand up for, I feel like we've gone so far away from what our the founders of our country originally stood for, and we lost so many freedoms. We lost so much over the last 3 years of COVID. And if you want somebody that's going to stand up to help to fight for all those constitutional freedoms that we feel like that most of us feel are slowly whittling away or very quickly whittling away, I'm going to fight my best to make sure that we, at least as a Republican Party, can stand up for those constitutional freedoms. And so I appreciate your vote and thank you for your time.
Well, we appreciate you running very much.
Absolutely.
So
that was fantastic sitting and chatting with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been fun.
I want to plant this seed, Steve, with you after the convention and stuff. I'd like to, we talked before about kind of having a roundtable discussion of health and different things, and I'd still like to do that. So,
we're going to
go ahead.
We're going to take a little break after the convention from politics, take a couple weeks off.
Okay.
So we're going to try and get North Dakota Right to Life on. We're going to get Naomi Chafee on with Turning Point USA Faith. We're going to get some other non-political things for a couple of weeks, just so everybody can have a minimal breather before we get back into primary runs.
It'd be good for you guys to take a break from it too.
There's no getting a break from politics.
We've been telling ourselves that for a while now, haven't we?
Right.
Yeah. All right, Steve. As always, it's fantastic talking with you, my friend.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys for everything that you do and for showing up.
All right. Thank you, bud.
Right.
Thanks.
Have a good night. Yep.
You too. Dr. Steve Nagel there from 180 Health Solutions. He's running for the National Committeeman position for the RNC. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, the first time I met Steve was in Morton County in September of 2020. And that was when they first announced that the Bismarck Burley Health was going to be trying to push more shutdowns, to push more mask mandates, to greater restrict people's movements due to COVID. And so that's where I first met Steve. And we really developed a friendship over the last 3-4 years. And it's been nice because he's a good sounding wall. And that goes for anything. Like, he can have a conversation, which is why I'm excited that he's running for the national chair, because it's somebody you can talk to. And I'm not saying Shane's not. I've just never had a lot of one-on-one time with him, so I'm not saying good, bad, or the other on him. But it's nice to see another seat that's not being unopposed. You shouldn't just be able to walk all the way through to November. When otherwise, what's the point of having a primary?
So my story with Steve is I met him
the
night that I met a bunch of them. Actually, I met Luke Simons, and obviously we know what kind of friendship I have with him now. But they were all up in the Williston area for well, it was basically a district reorg, and Luke was there, and I met Dr. Steve in the parking lot actually, and I knew about him because of Todd Mitchell talking about him, because at that point, a few years before, Todd was doing stuff with 180 Health Solutions on his health, and I'd always kind of wanted to talk to Steve about my wife's health and different things and stuff, and so I actually met him in the parking lot of this event, and we just hit it off. I knew the name, but never knew the face or anything like that, and we had a pretty good conversation, and my wife ended up going to 180 Health Solutions, and it's been a good thing. So that's how I know him, and obviously we kind of run in the same circles and different things like that. So I'm glad to see that he's running. So I think he would be a good voice.
Yeah, absolutely. So this next week, Tuesday, we have Alex Ballas. I'm sorry, Alex. I will get your last name right. The other gentleman that's running for the U.S. House.
Yeah.
Yep. So he confirmed we will have him on with us Tuesday night at 8:00.
Okay.
Next Friday, we don't have anything set up yet. I have some feelers out. We're still trying to get statewide candidates on. So for Tom Beadle, if you want to come on and please pitch your case for the primary runner, John Godfrey, Kirsten Baszler, obviously. Darko, we haven't heard from him yet. Both those DPI candidates. And then, yeah, I'd love to have Kelly or Kevin or any of those guys on too, just so you guys get a chance to talk with them. And we are working on some of that as well. But other than that, with everybody's time frames, because they're all running for conventions, it's a little bit shorter notice for our programming than normal. So I do apologize.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. So you got any final thoughts there, Mr. Marv?
It's never too late to get involved. It's never too late to get involved, folks. We've already had one run at a public office with a snowball's chance, and where. And we did a really good job with it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily need to be running for a seat. You can be out door knocking. You can be out talking to your friends about candidates you like. Like, get involved. Show up at district meetings. Show up at these fundraisers. Meet the people that are representing you. You shouldn't be afraid of your elected representatives. You shouldn't be afraid to contact them, and they shouldn't be afraid to talk with you either. So we got 2.5 more months to the primary here. If you got a candidate that you're supporting and they're doing a door knocking event in your neighborhood, go knock doors. Go show them your support. It kind of comes back to, you look at it this way. Let's put a pragmatic spin on this. Tithing with your church, right? Not everybody has that money to give. They don't, because sometimes you're just stuck in a bad situation. And my wife had this conversation with a pastor once. I don't have a job because she was a stay-at-home mom. Our budget's really tight. Does tithing include giving up my time, giving up things that I can do? And it really created kind of a back and forth cycle. And I was surprised with their response, considering what's out there. And you take that. So many of us give so much of what we have, but it doesn't need to be money. It doesn't. I would rather have your time. I would rather have your support out there knocking doors, out there making phone calls for me, out there even sending emails, ways you can help without having to leave the couch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sometimes keyboard warriors are a good thing, So I guess that's my final thought. I mean, if you support a candidate, folks, if you feel bad because you can't donate money, give some of your time if you have it. You know, a little bit of time goes a long way, even if it's just having conversations with your neighbors.
See, and I think that's just to piggyback off that. I think that's where we've gone wrong in this country for so long, is we don't have those conversations, and we're so unconnected, however you want to say that. And this is how we've gotten to where we're at right now. So,
And that's my thing. I'm tired of seeing millions of dollars spent in North Dakota to win a race.
yeah.
So
Yep.
is that the call?
What's that?
Is that the call?
No. I think we're good. So, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, the job of a safety professional never ends, man. It's 24/7. So, but no, I get what you're saying, and I just, like I said before, that's how we've gotten to where we're at right now is not paying attention, not being involved, and I mean it doesn't. There's some of us that are on the trail 24/7, and then there's some that we can only do what we can do, right?
Yep.
So I would just encourage everybody to be involved some way. Yeah, you're just gonna have to figure out what works for your schedule and you and do what you can. And I mean, so we got a new t-shirt here at work the other week, and the other day, and I've been doing my safety meetings with my crews and stuff, and the shirt says 1% better every day. And that's what I strive to do, is be 1% better every day. So I guess what I'm trying to say is every little bit counts. Try and
Yep.
be 1% better every day, no
There you
matter
go.
what you're doing. So, yep.
Well, I think with that said, we can let people go about their Friday nights. What do you think, Shiloh?
You bet. You bet. I think so. So with that, we will see you Tuesday with House candidate Alex. I'm not going to try and butcher his name. I apologize, Alex. We'll learn your name before you come on Tuesday. So with that, everybody enjoy the windy weekend and the sunshine, and we will see you.